Mira adjusted her seat in 12C and looked out of the small airplane window. The sky stretched endlessly in shades of blue, fading to white clouds that looked soft and inviting. She felt a small smile appear on her face. Flying had always been one of her favorite experiences. There was something about being above the world, far from daily worries, that made everything seem smaller. From up here, life felt simpler, calmer, and full of possibilities. The hum of the airplane filled the cabin. Passengers whispered quietly, some reading, others dozing off, and a few talking to the flight attendants. The air smelled faintly of coffee and recycled air, and the gentle vibration of the plane under her feet was oddly comforting. Mira closed her eyes for a moment and let herself enjoy the calm. She had taken Flight 907 many times before, and she knew the routine well. The pilot would announce the flight path, the attendants would serve drinks, and in just a few hours, she would be home. She loved her home city, though it had grown busier and noisier over the years. Sometimes, she wondered if flying was her way of escaping for a while, a chance to see the world from a different perspective. Mira opened her eyes and looked at the clouds again. The airplane moved smoothly, leaving soft trails of vapor behind. She watched as the sun reflected off the wings, shining like silver in the sky. The other passengers seemed relaxed too, some looking out of their windows, others reading magazines. A child giggled softly a few rows ahead, and a woman whispered soothing words to her baby. Everything seemed normal, just another flight in a busy schedule. The flight attendants moved down the aisle, offering drinks and snacks. Mira shook her head at the drinks cart. She did not want anything. Instead, she leaned back in her seat, placing her hands on her lap. She noticed the faint vibrations of the engines, steady and rhythmic, and found them soothing. It felt as if the airplane itself was breathing along with the passengers' dot as the minutes passed. Mira lost herself in thought. She reflected on the week she had just spent at a business conference. Meetings, presentations, networking, and tight schedules had filled her days. She felt proud of her accomplishments, but also tired. Flying gave her a chance to rest while still moving forward. From her seat, she could see the world beneath her, a patchwork of clouds and sunlit air, and it reminded her how vast and infinite life could feel. Suddenly, a small shiver passed through the cabin. The airplane tilted slightly, not enough to alarm anyone, but enough for Mira to notice. The pilot's calm voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are expecting some light turbulence ahead. Please remain seated and keep your seat belts fastened." Mira tightened her seat belt and adjusted her posture. She watched the clouds shift outside. The light moved differently than usual, swirling slightly as if pushed by an unseen force. The passengers murmured quietly, but most seemed unconcerned. Turbulence was normal, and the flight crew handled it with routine ease. Mira tried to focus on the familiar rhythm of the engines. The plane dipped slightly and then leveled again. Mira felt the small motion in her stomach and smiled. Flying always involved minor adjustments, small reminders that even in calm moments, the sky could change. She returned her gaze to the window and noticed the light reflecting off the edges of the clouds. It was bright but soft, creating patterns that looked almost magical. She felt a sense of peace wash over her, a rare moment of serenity in an otherwise busy life. For a few minutes, everything seemed normal. The hum of the engines, the soft chatter of passengers, and the faint scent of coffee filled the cabin. Mira closed her eyes and let herself relax. She imagined floating above the world, weightless and free, with nothing to worry about. The airplane moved steadily, carrying everyone forward through the open sky. But then something unusual caught her attention. A flicker of light appeared in the distance, far beyond the clouds. At first, Mira thought it was a reflection of the sun. She blinked and looked again. The light moved, almost too fast to follow with her eyes. It was steady, unlike the random sparkle of sunlight on clouds. Her curiosity grew, and she leaned closer to the window. Other passengers did not seem to notice. A man a few rows ahead was reading a book, completely absorbed. A woman was talking to her friend, laughing softly. Mira felt a strange sense of unease. The light moved faster now, closer, and it did not seem to belong in the normal flight path of airplanes. She frowned, trying to understand what she was seeing. The pilot's voice came over the intercom again, a bit more focused this time. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are approaching an unusual weather pattern. Please remain seated and ensure your seat belts are fastened." Mira's heart beat slightly faster. This was not ordinary turbulence. The light she had seen moved in ways that did not match any storm she had ever flown through. It was precise, deliberate, almost as if guided by something intelligent. She felt a mix of fear and fascination. Her hand rested on the window frame as she tried to get a better view. The plane continued forward, but Mira's attention remained on the strange light. It seemed to hover momentarily, then move in a straight line, closing the distance between it and the airplane. She could now make out its shape faintly. It was sleek, metallic, and unlike any aircraft she had ever seen. No windows, no wings like a normal plane, only smooth curves and a faint glow along its edges. Mira's breath caught. She was frozen in place, her mind racing. The cabin around her seemed quiet, but she could hear the soft vibrations of the plane through her feet. The light grew brighter as it approached. She felt a mixture of excitement and fear, a rare combination that made her pulse quicken. The flight attendants moved calmly down the aisle, checking on passengers. Mira wanted to call them over, but the words caught in her throat. She felt as if no one else could understand what she was seeing. The metallic figure moved closer, faster, and the air seemed to change. There was a subtle vibration, almost like a low hum that passed through her chest. The plane shifted slightly in response. Mira gripped the armrest of her seat. Her mind raced with questions. What was this jet? Where did it come from? And why did it feel so deliberate in its actions? She could see the glow along its body pulsing, almost as if it were alive. The thought made her shiver. It was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Despite the fear, Mira's curiosity grew stronger. She felt drawn to the figure outside, unable to look away. Her mind wandered to all the books and stories she had read about the mysteries of space. And the unknown. Could this be something not from Earth? Could it be something intelligent, something that had noticed her? The thought both thrilled and frightened her. The airplane continued forward, steady but aware of the presence nearby. Mira adjusted her seat, leaning closer to the window, determined to see as much as possible. The other passengers remained mostly unaware, caught in their own routines. Mira realized she was alone in this moment, witnessing something extraordinary from her seat in 12C at 31,000 feet. The hum of the engines seemed louder now, almost as if they were competing with the strange jet's presence. Mira's heart beat faster with every passing second. She knew the moment she was experiencing would stay with her forever. She felt a mix of fear, excitement, and awe that she could not explain. As the minutes passed, the light outside seemed to move in harmony with the airplane, following its path while maintaining a steady distance. Mira felt a strange connection, as if the jet knew she was there. She could see faint patterns along its surface, glowing lines that shifted in rhythm with its movements. The sight was mesmerizing. Mira's thoughts raced, but she remained calm enough to observe and remember every detail. The plane's gentle motion, the soft hum of engines, and the incredible sight outside combined into a moment that felt suspended in time. She realized she was experiencing something no one else on the plane might ever understand. For now, she could only watch. The calm sky of the early flight had transformed into something extraordinary. Mira knew that whatever came next, her life would change. She did not yet understand how, but she felt a deep sense of anticipation. The vast blue above, the smooth hum of the plane, and the glowing figure outside created a scene of wonder that would remain etched in her memory forever. At 31,000 feet, Mira in seat 1C was no longer just a passenger. She had become a witness to something beyond ordinary life, something that challenged everything she had ever known. The calm of the sky was still there, but it had shifted. The world above the clouds had opened a door to the unknown, and Mira's journey into that mystery was just beginning. Mira's eyes never left the strange figure outside the window. It had grown larger now, closer than she could have imagined. Its metallic body reflected the sunlight, casting flashes of brightness across the cabin. She could see its smooth surface and faint glowing lines that shifted along its body, like a moving pattern. It was sleek, unlike any aircraft she had ever seen, without wings or windows like normal planes. Mira felt a mixture of awe and unease. She had flown thousands of miles before, but she had never seen anything like this. The hum from the plane's engines seemed different now, almost as if it was responding to the strange jet. Mira felt a subtle vibration pass through her seat and up her spine. She gripped the armrest tightly. The passengers around her continued their routines, mostly unaware of the extraordinary event taking place outside. A child laughed softly a few rows ahead, and a woman adjusted her reading glasses. Absorbed in her book, Mira wondered if anyone else could sense the unusual presence nearby. The jet moved closer with astonishing speed. It glided beside the airplane effortlessly, matching its altitude perfectly. Mira's heart raced. She could see the outline of its body clearly now. It was streamlined, shaped almost like a teardrop, with faint, glowing markings running along its surface. The light pulsed in a pattern that was difficult to describe, as if it were alive and aware of her gaze. The pilot's voice came over the intercom again. It was calm, but Mira could sense the tension behind the words, "Ladies and gentlemen, we are observing an unusual object near our flight path. Please remain seated with your seat belts fastened." There is no cause for alarm. The announcement barely eased Mira's growing anxiety. She could feel the air shift slightly, a subtle change that hinted at the jet's presence. The metallic figure seemed to move with intention, adjusting its position to stay close to the airplane. Mira wondered why it was here. Was it studying them, or was it curious about humans? The thought made her heart pound with a strange excitement. The strange jet tilted slightly, and Mira could see a faint shimmer of light along its edges. She had read stories about advanced aircraft and alien technology, but this was different. This was real, and it was right there beside her. The vibrations in the cabin grew stronger, and she felt a subtle pressure in her chest, almost like the jet was sending a signal. She could not explain it, but she sensed that the jet was aware of her presence specifically. Other passengers began to notice the unusual movements of the airplane. A few people looked out of their windows, pointing and whispering to each other. Flight attendants remained calm, though Mira could see the tension in their eyes. She tried to focus on the jet, observing the patterns of light that shifted along its surface. It moved with grace, almost like a living creature, intelligent and precise. Mira's mind raced. What was it doing? Why was it so close? She wanted to speak to someone, but words seemed insufficient to describe the sight. She leaned closer to the window, trying to memorize every detail. The jet glided beside them for several moments, then moved slightly ahead, as if testing the limits of the airplane's speed. Mira could see faint energy pulses along its surface, glowing in a rhythmic pattern. The airplane's instruments flickered suddenly. Small warning lights blinked on the control panel, but the plane remained steady. Mira felt a small shiver of concern. The pilot's calm voice came again over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. We are experiencing minor electronic interference. All systems are under control." Mira's curiosity increased. The pulses of light from the jet seemed to interact with the airplane, almost like it was communicating. She could not understand the pattern, but it was deliberate. It repeated in sequences, each one slightly different, as if testing a response. Mira tried to recall her father's old science books about signals and codes. Something about the pattern felt familiar, though she could not place it exactly. The jet moved closer, and Mira could see the faint edges of what looked like mechanical panels. The glow along its body intensified briefly, then dimmed. She felt a strange pull, a mixture of fear and wonder. It was unlike any flying experience she had ever had. She had flown through storms, turbulence, and high winds, but this was different. This was purposeful. This was observation. Mira glanced at the other passengers. Some were beginning to murmur among themselves, confused by the slight turbulence and flickering lights in the cabin. Others were still absorbed in their own worlds, unaware of the extraordinary event outside. Mira felt isolated in her awareness. She was witnessing something beyond the ordinary, something beyond human understanding. The jet made a sudden movement, rising slightly above the plane and then tilting to the side. The cabin lights flickered as a low vibration passed through the plane. Mira could hear the faint whir of machinery in the background, though no one else seemed to notice. She pressed her hand against the window, feeling a subtle warmth radiating from the jet's surface. The sensation was faint but undeniable. Her mind raced with questions. Could this be a new type of aircraft developed in secret? She doubted it. The speed, the design, and the glowing patterns were unlike any human technology. Mira had studied aircraft and engineering enough to know this was beyond current human capabilities. She felt a chill of realization. Whatever this was, it was not ordinary. The pilot's voice came again, firmer this time. Attention passengers, we ask you to remain calm. We are experiencing continued interference with electronic systems. There is no immediate danger. Please stay seated. Mira nodded, though she was anything but calm. She watched as the jet adjusted its position, moving to align with the airplane. It hovered almost perfectly alongside, maintaining its speed and altitude with precise control. Mira noticed faint streaks of light trailing behind it, shimmering like liquid energy. She pressed her face closer to the window, unable to tear her eyes away. The jet's movement seemed purposeful. It was studying them, learning their behavior, or possibly trying to communicate. Mira felt a strange connection. She could not explain it, but it was as if the jet recognized her in some way. The thought made her pulse quicken. Could an object from beyond Earth understand a single human being? The question felt impossible, yet here it was, staring back at her through the glass of one to see. Mira tried to stay composed. She glanced around the cabin again. Some passengers were beginning to whisper nervously, pointing at the window. Flight attendants moved calmly, checking on everyone but keeping a professional distance. The plane itself remained steady, despite the unusual presence outside. Mira realized how remarkable it was that the pilots kept control with such skill. Suddenly, the jet emitted a soft pulse of light. The cabin lights dimmed briefly, and all electronic devices blinked off for a moment. Mira's heart jumped. She felt the vibrations of the plane shift slightly. The pulse passed through the aircraft like a wave, creating a sensation she could not describe. Her fingers tingled as they pressed against the armrest. She looked at the glowing jet, and it seemed to respond to her gaze. Mira's mind searched for answers. Could it be trying to communicate? She remembered stories of coded messages and signals sent into space. Messages meant for intelligent life. The pulses of light were not random. There was a pattern, a rhythm, a repetition. Mira felt a spark of recognition. Her father had once shown her diagrams of coded sequences used in communication experiments. Could it be the same principle? Was this jet responding to a human signal, or something like it? The jet hovered in place, maintaining its position with incredible precision. Mira could see subtle shifts in its glow, almost like a heartbeat. She felt a wave of wonder mixed with fear. The cabin remained mostly calm, though some passengers had started to look around nervously. Mira stayed focused on the jet, observing every movement, every pulse of light. She knew this moment was extraordinary, possibly life-changing. Time seemed to stretch. Minutes passed, but it felt longer. The jet moved slowly, deliberately, and Mira felt as if it were watching her. She pressed her hand to the window and whispered softly to herself, "Who are you? Why are you here?" The jet seemed to respond with a brief increase in glow, a subtle pulse that ran along its body. Mira's heart raced. She felt a connection she could not explain, a sense that this presence was intelligent, aware, and possibly friendly. She realized that whatever this was, it had chosen to make contact in its own way. The airplane continued to glide through the sky, steady and calm despite the extraordinary event outside. Mira leaned back slightly, taking a deep breath. She knew the journey ahead would be unlike anything she had experienced. The sky above, calm yet alive with possibility, had opened a door to the unknown. She felt ready, in a way, to face whatever came next. At 31,000 feet. Mira in 12C was no longer just a passenger. She was a witness to something beyond human understanding. The strange jet had appeared in the sky, deliberate and intelligent. It was close, It was real, and it was aware. Mira's life had changed, though she did not yet know how. The adventure above the clouds had begun. Mira's eyes remained fixed on the strange jet outside the window. Its glow had become brighter now, more defined, and the patterns along its body shifted like a flowing stream of light. It hovered just beside the airplane, moving with a precision that was both mesmerizing and unsettling. Mira felt a strange pulse in her chest, as if the jet were aware of her presence. She gripped the armrest tightly and leaned forward, trying to take in every detail. The cabin around her seemed normal at first glance. Passengers continued to murmur and fidget in their seats, some looking out of their windows, others trying to continue their reading or work. A child giggled softly as a parent adjusted the seat belt. The flight attendants moved down the aisle, offering reassurance with calm words and gentle gestures. Yet, Mira could feel a subtle tension in the air. Something extraordinary was happening, and no one fully understood it. The jet moved closer, its glowing lines pulsing rhythmically. Mira noticed that it tilted slightly, and with that tilt, a low vibration passed through the airplane. It was not strong enough to cause alarm, but it was noticeable. The cabin lights flickered for a brief second, and electronic devices blinked. Passengers murmured nervously, but the pilot's calm voice over the intercom reassured everyone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing minor electronic interference. All systems are functioning. Please remain seated with your seat belts fastened." Mira nodded, though her heart raced. The interference was minor, but the timing and the presence of the jet suggested something deliberate. She felt as if she were witnessing a communication that no one else could yet understand. She pressed her hand to the window, feeling a faint warmth that seemed to emanate from the jet. It was subtle, almost comforting, yet entirely unfamiliar. The jet's glow shifted in patterns. Mira's mind raced to interpret them. She had always been fascinated by codes and signals, and now she saw something that seemed intentional, almost like a language made of light. Each pulse of energy was timed, each shift in color deliberate. Mira leaned closer, her forehead almost touching the cool window. She could see faint shapes within the glow, lines and angles that reminded her of diagrams she had seen in her father's old science books. Her father had been a physicist who studied communication signals and the possibilities of contact beyond Earth. He had often explained to her the idea of messages sent into space, designed to be understood by intelligent beings. Mira's heart leapt as she realized that the pulses from the jet followed a recognizable rhythm. There was a pattern. Someone, or something, was trying to communicate. She looked around the cabin, but no one else seemed to notice the detail of the glow. They were reacting to the turbulence and the flickering lights, not the intricate patterns. Mira realized that she might be the only one capable of understanding it. Her pulse quickened as she considered the implications. This was not a random encounter. This was deliberate. The jet moved slightly, positioning itself beneath the airplane, and Mira felt another vibration, this time stronger. The cabin lights dimmed, then brightened in rhythm with the jet's pulses. Mira pressed her hand against the window and felt tingling energy run up her arm. It was subtle, not painful, but unmistakable. Her mind raced with questions. Could this be a form of communication? Could it be trying to reach her specifically? The jet tilted slightly again, and Mira noticed faint symbols forming along its glowing surface. They were not letters, not numbers, but shapes that repeated in sequences. The shapes shifted and changed rhythmically, almost like they were dancing in the light. Mira's heart pounded. She recognized the structure, though she could not yet interpret the meaning. It was similar to the codes her father had taught her about. Sequences designed to convey messages without words. Mira's breath caught. She whispered softly to herself, almost afraid to speak aloud. "It's trying to tell me something." The jet responded with a brighter pulse, and the vibration passed through the plane once more. Mira felt a surge of awareness, as if the energy itself carried meaning. She realized that this was not just observation. It was interaction. The jet was aware of her. It had chosen to communicate with her specifically. The cabin began to stir as passengers noticed the unusual movements of the airplane. Some whispered to each other nervously. The flight attendants moved efficiently, checking on everyone and offering reassurance. Mira stayed focused on the window, oblivious to the reactions around her. She could feel the intelligence behind the glowing patterns. There was thought, there was purpose, and there was awareness. The jet moved closer, hovering in perfect alignment with the airplane. Mira could see the intricate details of its structure. The smooth metallic surface reflected the sunlight in patterns that shifted constantly. The glowing lines pulsed in a rhythm that seemed almost musical. Mira realized she could sense the timing intuitively, as if her mind were responding to the signal. She pressed her hand to the window again, focusing on the patterns. Her mind raced with memories of her father's research. He had often explained that any intelligent signal from beyond Earth would likely use patterns, repetition, and structure that could be recognized as intentional. Mira felt a spark of recognition. This was exactly what he had described. The jet's glow shifted more rapidly, forming a sequence of shapes that appeared almost like a sentence. Mira felt a thrill of realization. She could not read it fully, but she understood the purpose. The jet was trying to communicate, and it had chosen her to receive the message. She felt a mixture of awe and responsibility. She had been given the opportunity to witness something extraordinary, something that could change the understanding of humanity itself. The airplane shook slightly as the jet emitted another pulse. Mira felt the vibration in her chest and stomach. The pulse passed through the plane like a wave, subtle but undeniable. Passengers murmured and looked around, confused by the minor turbulence. The pilot's voice remained calm, reassuring everyone. Mira ignored the other reactions. She focused on the symbols on the jet's surface. Each pulse of light seemed to correspond with a change in the shapes. She realized that the light and the shapes were connected, forming a system of communication. Mira's mind worked quickly, trying to match patterns and rhythms. She felt a growing confidence. Somehow, she could understand, at least in part, the message being conveyed. The jet moved beneath the plane, its glow brighter than before. Mira could see subtle movements, almost like gestures. The shapes shifted in a way that suggested emphasis, repetition, and clarity. She felt a deep connection with the presence outside. It was intelligent, aware, and deliberate. It was sending a message, and she was receiving it. Her heart raced with anticipation. She whispered again, softly, almost as if speaking would help the communication. "I am listening. I am ready." The jet responded with a rapid sequence of pulses, brighter and more defined than before. Mira felt the energy pass through the plane again. The tingling sensation in her hand and arm was stronger now. She realized that the jet was responding to her acknowledgement. It had recognized her awareness, her attention, and was adapting its signals accordingly. The cabin lights flickered with each pulse, casting patterns of light across the interior. Mira could see the reactions of the passengers, some startled, some curious, but none able to perceive the full significance of what was happening. She felt isolated, yet empowered. She was part of something larger than herself, part of a communication that spanned beyond human understanding. The jet shifted slightly to hover closer to the window. Mira could see the patterns clearly now. They were sequences of lines, angles, and glowing shapes that repeated in structured ways. Her mind worked to decipher them. She felt an intuitive understanding forming, a sense that the message was not only visual, but also emotional, carrying intention and thought. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. Mira remained focused, her hand pressed to the window, her mind fully engaged. The jet continued to pulse and shift, responding to her awareness. She realized that she was participating in a form of dialogue, even if the words were not spoken. The airplane's instruments flickered again, but the plane remained stable. The pilot's voice reassured passengers, and the flight attendants continued their calm routines. Mira barely noticed them. She was absorbed in the communication unfolding outside. The jet's glow shifted in response to her focus, and she felt a surge of understanding. Finally, the jet pulsed brightly, then dimmed slightly. Mira felt a sense of completion, as if the first part of the message had been delivered. She pressed her forehead to the window, breathing deeply. The symbols had conveyed recognition, awareness, and intention. Mira understood that this was just the beginning. The jet had made contact, and humanity's connection with something beyond the planet had begun. At 31,000 feet, Mira was no longer just a passenger. She had become a participant in a historic moment. The calm sky had transformed into a stage for the unknown, and she had been chosen to witness and respond. She felt a mixture of awe, excitement, and responsibility. The world below seemed distant and small, and the possibilities above seemed limitless. Mira leaned back in her seat, still focused on the fading glow of the jet. She knew the journey ahead would test her understanding and courage. The signals she had seen were only the beginning. Mira could not take her eyes off the strange jet outside the window. Its glowing patterns had shifted again, more complex now, almost like a conversation in light. She felt a thrill of recognition, mixed with unease. Something about the pulses and shapes seemed deliberate, intelligent, and aware. Mira's mind raced to interpret them. She pressed her hand against the window and felt the faint energy ripple through the glass. Each pulse seemed to carry meaning, a rhythm she could almost understand intuitively. The passengers around her remained largely unaware of what was happening. Some whispered nervously, commenting on the flickering lights and minor turbulence. A few children looked curiously at the sky, pointing and asking questions to their parents. Flight attendants moved calmly, keeping the atmosphere relaxed. Mira felt a sense of isolation in her awareness. She alone could perceive the full significance of the moment. The jet moved closer, hovering beside the airplane with precision. Its glowing lines shifted rhythmically, forming sequences of patterns that seemed almost familiar. To her, Mira's thoughts went back to her father, a physicist who had worked on communication signals. He had shown her coded sequences designed for intelligent life. The patterns on the jet reminded her of those sequences, but far more advanced. She realized that this was a form of communication, one that went beyond ordinary language. Mira leaned closer to the window, squinting to see the symbols more clearly. The jet emitted a pulse of light, and she felt the vibration travel through the plane. It was subtle but undeniable. Her heart raced. She pressed her hand to the glass again and whispered softly, "I understand you. I am listening." The jet responded with a series of rapid pulses, brighter than before. Mira felt the energy pass through the cabin, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause. She realized that the jet was not only observing her, but responding to her awareness. The connection was real, intentional, and intelligent. Her mind worked quickly to follow the sequences of light and symbols. She could see repetitions, variations, and emphasis, all indicating that this was a structured message. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, calm but slightly firmer than before. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing continued electronic interference. All systems remain stable. Please remain seated and keep your seat belts fastened." Mira barely noticed the announcement. Her focus remained on the jet and the patterns it displayed. She traced the glowing lines with her eyes, noticing subtle changes that occurred with each pulse. The sequence seemed designed to test recognition, almost like a greeting. Mira felt a rush of understanding. The jet was aware of humans, aware of her, and it was signaling deliberately. The airplane's instruments flickered briefly as the jet adjusted its position. Beneath the aircraft, Mira felt a gentle vibration, different from normal turbulence. It passed through her body in a wave, leaving a tingling sensation. She pressed her hand harder against the window, trying to connect with the energy. The patterns shifted again, now forming sequences that resembled arrows, lines, and geometric shapes. Mira's mind instinctively interpreted them as directional instructions, perhaps a guide or a message to follow. Her thoughts raced. What was the jet trying to communicate? Was it giving information, asking questions, or simply acknowledging her presence? Mira realized that this was not a random encounter. It was deliberate. The jet had recognized humans, understood their potential, and had chosen to make contact. Her pulse quickened as she realized the significance of what she was witnessing. The jet emitted another series of light pulses, and the vibration intensified slightly. Mira felt a deeper connection, as if the energy carried intent and thought. She focused her mind, trying to follow the rhythm of the patterns. She recognized repetitions, sequences, and variations that suggested a form of structured intelligence. The jet was aware, and it was communicating in a way that transcended ordinary understanding. Mira's heart pounded with excitement. She whispered softly to herself, almost as if speaking would reinforce the connection. "I am listening. I am ready to understand." The jet responded immediately, its glow brightening in a sequence that mirrored her focus. Mira felt a surge of comprehension. The patterns were forming a language of sorts, one based on light, rhythm, and energy. She could not read it fully, but she sensed its purpose. The jet was sharing knowledge, testing her perception, and establishing trust. The passengers around her began to notice the unusual behavior of the airplane. Some pointed out the window, murmuring questions to each other. The flight attendants continued their calm routines, though Mira sensed the tension in their movements. She ignored it, remaining focused on the jet and the glowing symbols. This was no ordinary sight. It was the beginning of a dialogue, a first contact between humans and something beyond Earth. The jet moved slightly ahead, maintaining alignment with the airplane. Its glowing patterns shifted in complexity, forming sequences that seemed to convey intent and awareness. Mira traced the shapes with her eyes, noticing subtle repetitions and variations. Each pulse seemed to carry meaning, a message encoded in light. She realized that the jet was teaching her, guiding her to understand its signals. Her mind raced with the possibilities. This was not merely observation, it was interaction, a communication bridge between human and non-human intelligence. Mira pressed her hand against the glass and felt the energy pulse through her arm. The tingling sensation was almost like a heartbeat, reinforcing the connection. She understood that this moment was unique, a historic first step toward understanding something far greater than herself. The jet's glow intensified, forming sequences that resembled constellations and geometric patterns. Mira recognized elements from her father's research on communication signals. Though far more advanced, the patterns suggested deliberate thought, intelligence, and awareness. She felt a deep respect and admiration for the entity outside. This was no ordinary machine. It was a form of life, or at least a mind capable of understanding, observing, and communicating. The airplane's instruments flickered again, but the plane remained stable. The pilot's calm voice reassured passengers. Though Mira barely registered it, she was fully absorbed in the connection with the jet. Each pulse, each sequence, each glow carried meaning. She felt herself learning, adapting to the rhythm, understanding in a way that went beyond words. The jet moved closer to the window, and Mira could see subtle variations in its glow. The sequences became faster, more intricate, suggesting questions and responses. She realized that the jet was testing her awareness, measuring her ability to perceive and interpret the signals. She felt a mixture of excitement and responsibility. This was a dialogue, and she was a participant. Mira focused her thoughts, trying to synchronize with the rhythm of the pulses. She traced the sequences with her mind, following the repetitions and variations. She felt an intuitive understanding forming. The jet was teaching her, guiding her perception, and establishing a form of trust. The realization filled her with awe and determination. She knew that whatever came next would be significant. The glowing patterns shifted again, forming sequences that resembled arrows, lines, and interconnected shapes. Mira traced them with her eyes, recognizing repetitions and variations. She understood that the jet was conveying structure, intention, and awareness. Each pulse of light carried meaning, a message encoded in energy. Mira felt her connection deepen, sensing the intelligence behind the signals. She whispered softly, almost as if speaking aloud would help the understanding. "I am ready. I will follow. I am listening." The jet responded immediately with a bright pulse, and Mira felt the energy ripple through the plane. Her hand tingled on the window, and she felt a sense of completion for the first part of the message. The sequences conveyed acknowledgement, recognition, and trust. She realized that this was only the beginning. The jet had chosen her as a witness, a participant, and perhaps a messenger for what was to come. The airplane moved steadily through the sky, its engines humming smoothly. The passengers were mostly calm, though curiosity and nervousness began to show in some faces. Mira remained focused on the glowing jet, aware that she was part of something extraordinary. The jet had initiated contact, and she had responded. The human signal had been recognized. Minutes passed, and the jet hovered nearby, its glow dimming slightly as if acknowledging her understanding. Mira's heart raced with anticipation. She knew that the next stage of the encounter would reveal more about the intelligence behind the craft. She felt a sense of readiness, confidence, and awe. The sky above was no longer ordinary. It had become a stage for discovery, communication, and the unknown. At 31,000 feet, Mira in 12C was no longer just a passenger. She was a witness, a participant, and a recipient of humanity's first true contact. The jet had recognized the human signal, established a connection, and chosen her as the point of communication. Mira understood the significance of the moment. This was history, and she was part of it. She pressed her forehead gently against the window, taking a deep breath. The jet remained close, hovering with precise control and glowing with shifting patterns. Mira knew that the next steps would bring even greater understanding. As the jet continued to communicate and share its intelligence, Mira felt her heart racing as the jet hovered nearby. Its glow shifted in brighter patterns, pulsing with rhythm and intention. She pressed her hand against the window, sensing the energy flow from the craft. Each pulse carried meaning, and she now understood that the sequence was no longer random. The jet was sharing information, guiding her understanding, and confirming its awareness of humanity. Mira's pulse quickened as she realized the enormity of what was happening. The passengers remained mostly unaware. Some noticed the faint glow and pointed at the window, whispering among themselves. Flight attendants moved efficiently through the cabin, reassuring nervous passengers. Mira did not care. Her focus was entirely on the jet. She had been chosen as a witness to something extraordinary, and she felt both awe and responsibility. The jet's patterns shifted again, faster and more intricate. Mira recognized sequences that mirrored the concepts her father had taught her about signals and communication. She realized the jet was using a method of visual coding that could be understood by intelligent beings capable of recognizing structure and rhythm. The realization sent a thrill through her body. This was proof that intelligence, even beyond Earth, could comprehend and respond to human patterns. The airplane's instruments flickered slightly, and the vibrations passed through the cabin, subtle yet noticeable. Mira felt the pulse in her chest, as if the jet's energy was synchronized with her own awareness. She whispered softly to herself, "I understand. I am ready to receive." The jet responded immediately. A series of bright pulses ran along its surface, forming geometric sequences and flowing lines. Mira traced the patterns with her eyes and mind, intuitively following the rhythm. The sequences seemed to carry information, awareness, recognition, and perhaps even guidance. Mira felt as if she were part of a conversation that transcended ordinary language. Suddenly, the jet moved beneath the airplane, aligning perfectly with its path. Mira could see faint streaks of glowing lines trailing from its body, shimmering like liquid light. She realized the patterns were directional, almost like a map or instructions. Her mind raced with understanding. This was more than observation. The jet was guiding, teaching, and sharing knowledge. The vibration in the cabin increased slowly, and the pulse of energy seemed to pass directly to her. Mira could feel the connection deep within herself. It was not frightening, only profound. She pressed her hand firmly against the window and focused. Her mind, trained from years of curiosity and learning, began to decode parts of the pattern. She realized the jet was indicating the presence of intelligence, understanding human thought, and signaling trust. The pilot's voice came over the intercom. "Calm and professional, ladies and gentlemen. We are experiencing continued electronic interference. All systems remain under control. Please stay seated and keep your seat belts fastened." Mira barely noticed. She was fully absorbed in the flow of light and energy outside. The jet hovered close, pulsing and shifting with precision. Mira traced the sequences, realizing that they formed not only patterns but concepts. They conveyed acknowledgement of humanity, the presence of intelligence, and a subtle invitation to learn and interact, the jet emitted a brighter pulse, and the vibration passed through the plane more strongly. Mira felt tingling in her hands and arms as she followed the patterns. She whispered softly, almost instinctively, "I am listening. I am ready to learn. I am human." The jet responded immediately. Its glow intensified, forming sequences of lines, shapes, and interconnected symbols. Mira understood that this was a deliberate message. It was communicating trust, awareness, and recognition. The realization filled her with wonder. Humanity, for the first time, had been recognized by intelligence beyond Earth. Mira's mind raced with questions and excitement. Could this be the beginning of a true exchange of knowledge? Could this craft, this intelligence, teach humans about the universe? She pressed her forehead to the window and focused entirely on the patterns. Her intuition guided her through the pulses. She felt a connection that went beyond sight or sound. It was as if the jet's presence spoke directly to her mind. The glowing patterns began to form sequences that Mira recognized as basic instructions. They were simple but deliberate, intended to be understood by humans. The jet seemed to indicate observation, caution, and awareness. Mira realized it was sharing methods of understanding the universe and testing her response. It was communicating in a language built of logic, rhythm, and energy. Minutes passed as Mira focused intently. The passengers continued their routines, some still unaware, others curious. Flight attendants moved efficiently, maintaining calm. Mira ignored them. Her entire attention was on the jet. She was a participant in history, in a moment that would be remembered for generations. Suddenly, the jet pulsed brighter than ever. Mira felt a strong vibration pass through the cabin. The glowing lines shifted rapidly, forming a pattern that she now fully recognized. It was a symbol of acknowledgement, recognition, and trust. She realized that the jet had accepted her response, confirmed her awareness, and recognized the human presence. Humanity had been acknowledged. Mira pressed her hand to the window firmly, feeling the pulse. She whispered softly, "Thank you. I understand. Humanity is here." The jet responded with a long pulse that spread across its entire body. The glow seemed to encompass the entire plane, bathing the cabin in soft light. Mira felt a profound sense of awe. The intelligence behind the craft had chosen to communicate directly, had recognized the human mind, and had shared its presence and intent. She realized that humanity's first real contact had been made. The airplane continued to glide steadily. The jet hovered nearby, pulsing and shifting with precision. Mira could see the energy flowing, the patterns forming, and the sequences repeating with intention. She felt a deep connection, a sense that this moment would change the understanding of humans forever. Her thoughts turned to the implications: knowledge, awareness, understanding beyond human limits, and a recognition of intelligence beyond Earth. This was proof that humans were not alone. The jet's message was simple but powerful. It was acknowledgement. It was recognition. It was the first step toward a dialogue that could reshape humanity's future. Mira's pulse slowed slightly as she took a deep breath. She had been chosen as a witness, as a participant, and as a messenger. The jet hovered close, pulsing and glowing. She realized that its patterns contained more than just acknowledgement. They contained guidance, trust, and an invitation to learn. She felt honored, excited, and deeply aware of the importance of this moment. The airplane's instruments flickered once more, then stabilized. The jet emitted one final sequence of bright pulses. Mira felt the energy surge through her, subtle yet profound. She understood that the encounter was concluding, but the connection remained. The jet had communicated recognition, established trust, and shared the first human signal. The passengers began to notice the fading glow. Some whispered in wonder, pointing at the sky. Flight attendants continued their calm routines. Mira stayed focused on the jet, now dimming as it prepared to depart. She felt a deep sense of completion, as if the first chapter of a story had ended and the next was only beginning. Then, without warning, the jet moved upward and forward, vanishing into the sky at incredible speed. Mira watched until the last glimmer of light disappeared. She pressed her hand to the window one final time, feeling the faint echo of energy. Her heart raced with exhilaration and understanding. Humanity had been acknowledged. The first contact had been made. Mira leaned back in her seat, taking deep, steady breaths. She felt a profound mix of awe, relief, and excitement. The calm sky was restored, but everything had changed. She had witnessed intelligence beyond Earth, communicated with it, and had felt its recognition. She realized that the world below her, the lives of the passengers, and the future of humanity had all shifted in that moment. The airplane continued on its path, gliding smoothly through the clouds. Mira looked out at the endless blue sky and felt a sense of possibility. Knowledge, communication, and understanding awaited humanity. The jet's message was simple but powerful. Humans were seen, recognized, and invited to explore further. Mira smiled, realizing that she had been part of the first human step towards something greater than herself. When the plane landed, Mira felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. She walked off the airplane, still processing the encounter. She knew she had to share what had happened. She contacted an old research institute that had once worked with her father. When she described the glowing patterns and the pulses of light, the scientists were stunned. They confirmed that the sequences matched codes humanity had sent decades ago into space, intended for intelligent life. Mira's heart swelled with pride and wonder. The truth was clear. Something beyond Earth had answered humanity's call, and she had been chosen to witness it. At 31,000 feet, in Seat 1 to see, she had become a participant in history. Humanity was no longer alone. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. The sky above had opened a door to understanding, connection, and discovery. Mira knew that this was only the beginning. The universe was vast, full of intelligence waiting to be understood. Humanity's journey into the unknown had begun, and she had been given the first,